I did a paper all on disasters and how cities can rebuild. I was looking in Seattle and Boston specifically because there were fires throughout the 19th century, leading to a lot of damage in very commercial areas. That being said, it was over 100 years ago, so technologies have changed, and it was in the States where there was, at the time, virtually no building code, so much easier back then to rebuild quickly. I've definitely heard about the explosion in Beirut and done a bit of research on it. I don't know a ton about the city, but from the research I did, it seems like the most successful way to rebuild is just to go about it quickly but carefully, and just hearing from the citizens in what they think would improve the city. And it's not about just getting the city rebuilt for the sake of it, even though that's definitely pressing, but about making it the same, if not better, and more livable for the citizens. And of course, taking preventative measures.
You know, Emily, that's a great thought you said, just because it's like people are so rushing to build things back because people have no place to stay right now, which is kind of how this is, you know, dangerous. So what like problems can happen if people rush to build buildings?
They could be crappy buildings.
No, I know
not
that.
well made.
Not well made.
There's also a big environmental impact that could come from, I don't know, building unsustainably or using unsustainable materials. So you definitely want to keep that in mind. And I don't know, I'm just thinking too, my education is very Westernized. That's just what Northeastern tend to focus on our history classes. So my brain kind of jumps to Long Island, New York, where there was a big building boom throughout the 50s with making these single family homes all over. A lot of them don't have basements because there's that big rush. A lot of them, the foundations aren't great because there is that big rush to get things done. So it's a matter of working quickly, but also working very carefully and paying attention to detail.
Yeah, I think as far as rebuilding, it's good that the setting is in a city, because a lot of times like quick residential building turns into, you know, like modular systems and apartment homes and lower income housing, which again, you run the risk of not being as built as well. But I think what Emily was talking about with, like, in my brain, I'm imagining kind of suburbia and like the same house copy pasted everywhere, like these companies that just buy up land and build up developments of the same home. Those are the ones that are built quickly and are made to look nice, but in quality are not nice. Whereas rebuilding quickly in a city, you have a lot more resources handy. You have a lot more companies that are into these projects. So a lot more credibility, I feel like. But also the buildings that they'd be making themselves, I imagine, are multifamily housing. So they definitely have a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a lot more code they have to meet, a lot more boxes they have to check off. As far as being in a city, I'm not sure. I mean, again, I'm only used to Boston, New York, that kind of thing. But when you are building in a city and you have all these zoning laws and all of these regulations that the city puts down, there's definitely a lot more hoops you have to jump through. So I think that that will definitely aid the safety of the buildings that they are able to rebuild. So I think that's also a good point too.
I see. All right. Said, is there anything you wanted to ask more specifically, or not really?
You guys were using like the US as a reference for basically how to rebuild, but I know that in Lebanon we kind of tend to use more. We use different materials to build our buildings and our houses, even in the suburbs and whatnot. We focus on more like cement, things that are more concrete. While, for example, in the US, in the suburbs, they use more like, I'm not sure if it's called plywood or like the houses here are much more structurally sound. But imagine that even with the impact, even with the strength of the foundations of the houses that we have, and the buildings that we have, they were completely destroyed from the explosion. How do you check, first of all, if they are capable of rebuilding, first of all, and if you can actually work on repairing these houses, or whether you have to completely bring them down and restart?
I could get into that. So one thing I was looking into on the structures of Lebanon and all, I was interested in the history of, how the layout of Beirut was prior. So I went into it a bit, and, after the war in 1982, a lot of buildings were built quick, from what I understood, because of housing and everything like that needed to get sorted fast. So a lot of the organization of the place was all over because they just needed houses to come quick, and like villas and everything went away because they had to atone for that. And in regards to structurally sound and things like that, we have this problem in India as well, and this comes up a lot. We can do that for you, but the issue is the political aspect of it. So I don't need to tell you how your government runs. Like, I'm an outsider who's read into it. So that is always a problem, is that they may say that, yes, it's cleared, but there may be something shady in the background that could, just give you the all pass. Like, I looked into some of the structures in Lebanon, and like Said said, it's mostly concrete. But then you also had the villas in the areas that were completely destroyed. They hold the cultural heritage of it. Something Emily touched on was that you need to ask the people in Lebanon what they want. And, right now I don't know if it's still going on, but I'm assuming now the riots are still going on, or the protests are going on rather. And that's more to do with the distress of what people want, because Lebanon itself is a mixed country. It has from Arabs, Europeans, and Mediterraneans. There's an identity there. And to handle that all, plus atoning for these, permissions and everything like that, is going to be a challenge, practically. In terms of the building aspect of it, like Julia said, like, we don't want buildings to just be all the same. It's not a thing, especially Lebanon, with the cultural heritage and everything involved. We don't want it to go the Dubai route, going full corporate and driven. We wanted to have an idea within it of what Lebanon is, as well as how how we can develop it in the future as profit. So it does do both at the same time.
Preserve the
From a
cultural.
planning perspective,
Sorry?
yeah,
Yes.
ask from a planning perspective, what are the steps that you guys would take so that you can start the rebuild?